Subscribe to Family Reddit Chronicles. Let's begin. Austin Fisher learned early in his career that silence can speak louder than shouting. After 12 years as an investigative journalist, followed by a transition into documentary filmmaking, he became skilled at reading what people avoided saying, the pauses, the glances, the tension beneath calm words. He had built his career on uncovering truths hidden in plain sight. Still, nothing prepared him for the quiet strain inside his own marriage. "We have to go, Austin." Laura stood in the bedroom doorway, arms crossed in a posture he had come to recognize over the last 3 years. "It's Christmas. They're my parents." Austin looked up from his laptop. He had been reviewing footage for his latest documentary, which focused on abuse within youth institutions. The contrast was not lost on him. "Your father called Maya chunky at Thanksgiving," he said. "She barely ate for a week afterward." "He was joking," Laura replied, though her voice lacked confidence. "She's 10. Laura hesitated. "My mom already set a place for us. If we don't go, she'll be disappointed," Austin finished, closing the laptop, "and make passive-aggressive comments for 6 months. He reached for her hand, softening his tone. "Your parents use guilt to punish boundaries." Laura pulled away. "You don't understand. You grew up with normal parents. Mine are complicated." Austin's parents had died in a car accident when he was 25, leaving him with fond memories and a clear example of genuine affection. Laura's family was the opposite. Wealthy, cold, and highly performative. Norman Cummings had built a commercial real estate empire across several states and made sure everyone remembered who funded their comfort. His wife, Gladys, had mastered the skill of polite denial, smiling through anything she chose not to see. "I don't want to go," 7-year-old Ethan said, appearing in the doorway in oversized Spider-Man pajamas. "Grandpa's mean." Austin knelt and hugged him. "What did Grandpa do?" "Nothing," Ethan said after a glance at his mother. "He just makes me nervous." Laura sighed. "Even the kids know we can't skip it. It's just one dinner." Austin studied her face, exhausted, worn down by years of managing her father's moods. After 14 years together and 12 years of marriage, these visits only grew worse. "Fine," Austin said. "But the moment someone crosses a line—" "No one will," Laura replied too quickly. "It'll be fine." 3 hours later, they drove through the iron gates of the Cummings estate, a sprawling colonial mansion in one of Connecticut's wealthiest suburbs. Laura's brother Philip's BMW was already parked beside his wife Sylvia's Mercedes. "Uncle Philip," Maya ran ahead, her excitement still unfiltered at 10 years old. Philip lifted her with practiced enthusiasm. "There's my favorite niece." "I'm your only niece," Maya laughed. Philip was everything Norman admired, driven, ruthless, and fully committed to expanding the family business. Sylvia, an art history professor at Yale, was often mentioned by Gladys as evidence of the family's refinement. Norman appeared at the top of the steps, holding a glass of scotch despite the early hour. "About time," he called. "Thought you got lost." "Oh, right, you can't afford a proper navigation system." Laura stiffened. "Merry Christmas, Norman," Austin said evenly. "It's Mr. Cummings, or Sir," Norman replied. "Philip calls me Sir." "He also calls you Dad," Austin said calmly. "I'll stick with Norman." Norman's expression tightened, but Gladys intervened smoothly. "Come in. Dinner's almost ready." "Laura, you look thin. Are you eating enough?" Inside, the house was decorated with flawless precision. Expensive candles, curated antiques, and a towering tree filled with heirloom ornaments. Nothing resembled the handmade decorations Austin remembered from childhood. In the living room, Maya gravitated toward Sylvia, who showed her photos from a recent trip to Florence. Ethan stayed close to Austin, gripping his hand. Philip offered drinks. "Dad's serving a special scotch tonight. 25-year Macallan. Probably costs more than your mortgage." "Probably," Austin replied, refusing the bait. Norman settled into his leather chair, surveying the room. "Philip, tell Austin about the Henderson deal. Show him real success." As Philip bragged about acquiring a failing property and displacing dozens of small businesses, Austin noticed Gladys watching Ethan with an unsettling focus. "Ethan, sweetheart," she said, extending her hand. "Help Grammy in the kitchen." Ethan looked to Austin, who nodded. As the boy crossed the room, Norman stuck out his foot. Ethan stumbled, barely catching himself. "Careful, boy," Norman said sharply. "Clumsy like your father." Austin started to stand, but Laura grabbed his arm. "Don't, please." "It was an accident," she whispered. But Austin had seen the expression on Norman's face, intentional and satisfied. He recognized it. He had interviewed enough abusers to know the signs. Dinner was served in a formal dining room with a table set for 20 but occupied by 8. Norman sat at the head. The usual performance followed. Wine criticism, polite chatter, forced smiles. Maya spoke excitedly about her school play. Ethan barely touched his food. Norman turned to Austin. "Still making those little films? When will you get a real job?" "My latest documentary was picked up by Netflix," Austin replied. "It comes out in March." "Everyone has something on Netflix," Norman scoffed. What is it? More of your liberal agenda. It's about abuse in youth detention centers, Austin said, and the systems that protect abusers. The table fell silent. Who wants to watch that? Philip muttered. People who care about protecting children, Austin said. Norman leaned forward. You see villains everywhere. The world isn't that simple. You're right, Austin replied. Most abusers don't see themselves as villains. Norman's jaw tightened. Before he could respond, Ethan reached for his water. His hand shook and the glass tipped, spilling across the tablecloth. Norman stood abruptly, crossed the room, and grabbed Ethan's arm. You clumsy. Austin moved, but not fast enough. There was a sharp crack. Ethan screamed. Norman struck him across the face. That's for spilling water. No one intervened. Laura passed the potatoes with shaking hands. Philip refilled his wine. Sylvia stared at her plate. Gladys dabbed at the spill. Ethan cried silently, clutching his arm. Austin felt his vision blur as he rose from his chair. At that moment, Maya stood up. Grandpa, she said, her voice steady and cold. Should I tell them what you did last night when you came into my room? The room went completely still. Norman's face lost its color, then flushed deep red. Maya, sit down, he said sharply. Should I tell them where you put your hands? Maya continued. What you told me to keep secret? Maya, Gladys snapped, her voice cracking. That's enough. Maya didn't look at her grandfather. Her eyes were fixed on her grandmother. You knew, didn't you, Grammy? You were there. You saw him come into my room. Laura stood so abruptly that her chair tipped over. What are you talking about? Austin was already moving, lifting Ethan into his arms. His mind struggled to keep pace with what he had just heard, but one instinct overrode everything else. Protect his children. She's lying, Norman said, though his voice lacked force. She's confused. I'm not confused, Maya said, her fists clenched. You came to our house last night. You said Grammy sent you. You touched me. We're leaving, Austin said, his voice cutting through the chaos. Laura, get the car keys. Now. Laura stood frozen, caught between her daughter and her father, disbelief battling denial. Laura, Austin repeated, firmer this time. Philip had gone pale. Sylvia was crying openly. Gladys sat rigid, her composure finally cracking to reveal something colder beneath. You can't just leave, Norman said weakly. This is my house. Your house? Austin replied quietly, holding Ethan tighter. We'll see how long that matters. He headed for the door. Maya stayed close to his side. After a moment, Laura grabbed her purse and followed, not meeting anyone's eyes. Laura, if you walk out, Norman started. Shut up, Dad, she said, her voice breaking. Just shut up. In the car, Austin drove with one hand while carefully supporting Ethan's injured arm with the other. Maya sat in the back seat, her earlier composure finally giving way as her body shook with sobs. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't tell you before. Grammy said she'd be sad. Mom would be angry. You have nothing to apologize for, Austin said, his voice tight with emotion. None of this is your fault. Laura stared out the window, silent tears running down her face. They arrived at the emergency room within minutes. Austin carried Ethan inside as nurses immediately took notice of his swollen arm and the red handprint on his cheek. What happened? One nurse asked, her tone professional but alert. His grandfather twisted his arm until it broke, Austin said evenly, then slapped him. The nurse's expression shifted. We'll need to file a report with Child Protective Services. I'll file a police report myself, Austin said. And my daughter needs to be examined. The nurse nodded. I'll call Dr. Harrison. She specializes in pediatric assault cases. The next several hours passed in a blur. X-rays confirmed Ethan's arm was fractured but would heal with a cast. His injuries were photographed and documented. Maya's examination was more difficult. Dr. Harrison explained that there was evidence of inappropriate contact but no signs of penetration. Everything was carefully recorded. Your daughter was very brave, the doctor told them. Based on her account, this may have been an initial escalation. These situations rarely happen only once. You think he's done this before? Austin asked. I think you should assume he has, she replied. Shortly after, Detective Sylvia Schwartz arrived. She listened without interruption, taking detailed notes. I'll get a warrant tonight, she said. We'll search his home and office first thing in the morning. What about his wife? Laura asked quietly. Maya said she knew. We'll be speaking to her as well, the detective said. If she enabled this, she'll face charges. It was past midnight when they finally returned home. Both children slept in the master bedroom, unwilling to be left alone. In the kitchen, Laura collapsed in tears. Austin held her as she cried. Grief for her children, for the family she thought she had, and for the truth she could no longer deny. I should have known, she kept saying. You wanted to believe he was better, Austin said softly. He hurt our children, she whispered. Austin's voice was calm but final. I won't let this go. Not legally, not publicly. I'm going to make sure he loses everything. Laura looked up at him. Promise me. I promise. The next morning, Austin woke to a stream of messages. The first came from Detective Schwartz. Warrant executed. Norman and Gladys in custody. Preliminary search recovered significant evidence. The second message was from Philip. "We need to talk. Dad's lawyer called. This will destroy the family." Austin didn't respond. He made coffee, opened his laptop, and began working. He started with public records, property holdings, business filings, prior lawsuits. 50 years in business meant decades of potential evidence. By midday, he had already uncovered 3 civil cases against Cummings properties, all settled out of court under strict non-disclosure agreements. 2 cited hostile work environments. 1 alleged inappropriate conduct involving a minor. Laura appeared in the doorway, exhausted. "The kids are still asleep." Austin turned the screen toward her. "This one's from 15 years ago. A secretary accused Norman of assaulting her 14-year-old daughter at a company Christmas party." Laura sat down hard. "How did I not know?" "Because your family buried it," Austin said. He highlighted a signature. "Your mother witnessed the settlement." Laura's face went pale. She knew. The phone rang again. Detective Schwartz. "We found a locked safe in Norman's study," she said. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. Children, mostly girls between 8 and 14. Some appear staged. Others were taken without consent. Austin tightened his grip on the phone. "How many?" "At least 20 victims over roughly 30 years. Some relatives, others children of employees." "And Gladys?" "She's cooperating selectively, admitting nothing directly. Her attorney is already negotiating." When the call ended, Laura broke down again, this time in anger. "How many families did they pay off?" she asked. "We're going to find out," Austin said, opening a new document, "and everyone will know who Norman Cummings really was." Over the next 2 weeks, Austin worked relentlessly. He contacted families tied to old settlements, reviewed archived news stories, and interviewed former employees who had left abruptly. A clear pattern emerged: wealth, authority, and silence protecting the same behavior for decades. Some victims refused to speak. Others had been waiting for someone to ask. By the 3rd week, 15 women agreed to go on record. Their stories followed the same structure: access, manipulation, abuse, and payoff. Careers were threatened. Families were silenced. Children were ignored. Detective Schwartz met Austin for coffee one afternoon. "The criminal case is strong," she said, "but convictions aren't guaranteed. Given his age, he may plead to reduced charges." "That's not enough," Austin replied. "I agree," she said, "but that's all the system can promise." Austin already knew what he needed to do. Over the next month, he filmed interviews with every survivor willing to participate. Medical experts explained long-term trauma. Legal analysts detailed how power shields predators. Austin documented Norman's business empire and included his own family's experience: Ethan's injury, Maya's testimony, and Laura's reckoning. The documentary was titled "The House That Norman Built." Philip tried to stop it. Sylvia asked if it was necessary. "Yes," Austin said, "because this isn't just about prison, it's about the truth." The film premiered at Sundance and won the documentary award. Netflix acquired it 2 days later. When it was released in March, the impact was immediate. Norman Cummings became a national example of unchecked power. His business collapsed as investors withdrew and partners severed ties. He was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 25 years. Gladys pleaded guilty to accessory charges. Cummings properties filed for bankruptcy. The estate was seized and sold. Everything Norman built was dismantled. Austin wasn't finished. On the 1-year anniversary of that Christmas dinner, he released a follow-up short documentary. This project focused on the survivors, how they rebuilt their lives and reclaimed their voices. Several of the women featured had become advocates and counselors. Maya, now 11, spoke openly about therapy and her efforts to support other survivors. The message was clear. Norman Cummings had tried to silence people through money, fear, and shame. It didn't work. In the final scene, Austin sat with Maya and Ethan in their living room. Ethan's cast was long gone, leaving only a faint scar on his jaw, a reminder Austin used to teach his children about standing up to abuse and protecting others. "Do you think Grandpa is sorry?" Maya asked. Austin considered carefully. "I think he's sorry he was caught, but his choices don't define you. You get to write your own story." The documentary ended with on-screen updates. Norman Cummings died in prison at 72. His estate was liquidated, and the proceeds were distributed to victims. Gladys Cummings was released on parole after serving 18 months. Philip left real estate and declined to participate. At the second premiere, Laura sat beside Austin, holding his hand. "I don't thank you enough," she said, "for protecting our kids, for showing me what real accountability looks like." "Our children will grow up knowing this?" Austin replied. "When someone hurts you, you speak up." Later that night, Austin reviewed footage for his next project. A message from Detective Schwartz appeared. 2 more women came forward today. Inspired by the documentary, Austin paused, reflecting. Norman Cummings had built monuments to his own success. His real legacy became the courage of those he tried to silence. Down the hall, Maya read under a warm nightlight. Ethan slept peacefully, healing both physically and emotionally. They carried scars, but they also carried the certainty that they had been believed and protected. Austin closed his laptop and headed to bed. That, he knew, was a legacy worth leaving. This is where the story ends. Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to the channel and click the video on screen.